Hey again, everyone. This is RobbRyder on Sunday, July 5th, 2015. I never knew it before, but the Secretary of State has got lots and lots of power. In fact, she's got the Tort Court. And if you know any police officers, please have them watch this video. I'm going to show you, I want to show them and us what they're doing, why it's wrong, and if they continue to do it, well then, shame on them. But I'm not your enemy, guys. We don't need to do this to each other. It's a Babylonian system we're in, and you're doing what you need to do to make your payments, whatever. But it's those payments that are the problem, because they never truly existed anyways, because whoever you thought lent you money didn't do it. So you don't have a house payment, right? You shouldn't be paying your electrical bill. The power companies are owned by the people. Why are we paying for electricity? You may have to pay to have the wires run to get it to your house, but once that's in, it's pretty much paid for. We just got to buy coal to put into the plant to keep it running. More on that in a minute, but back to the traffic ticket. So in Michigan, I did a video where the rubber meets the road. It's probably just my last one. And in the Michigan Vehicle Code, it says the Secretary of State executes and administers this code, which means if you're going to be charged with an infraction that comes out of that code, you should be going to court to the Secretary of State. They have courts. They got hearings, all that stuff. But that isn't where you go. You go to some other place. Here they call them the district courts. But that court doesn't have jurisdiction over the vehicle code. In fact, they take you to, what do they call it, traffic court. And traffic has to do with commerce. So you're going to a commerce court when you go to that court, instead of going for what they said it was, which was a vehicle code violation, to the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State's the one you should be getting court paperwork from if you're going to be charged with the vehicle code. So here's an example. Right, so hey, cops, pay attention. Right, this piece of paper is a simulated legal process that is using color of law, which technically is a human rights violation. This is an international crime against humanity. This piece of paper right here, and the dude that did it, did it. I know he doesn't think of it that way, but it is what it is. Because here it says the person named above in violation of, and they didn't check any boxes. He's not in violation of a local ordinance, state law, administrative rule. He hasn't broken any laws yet. Right? What the game is to convince the defendant that he was going to break that law and then be charged because he was going to break it, not because he had broke it. That because of the diligent work of this man here, he stopped this guy from breaking the law. And they send you to the black robe priest for confession, and he gives you a penance. That's how they like it to work. So this city cop wrote down a state code violation as what was wrong, and he don't have jurisdiction over state code violations. He has jurisdiction over city ordinances. Right? You don't have the jurisdiction, my friend, unless you're a state cop, and then I'm still going to challenge it. You write that number down. I had better be able to go to the Secretary of State immediately and see that this has been entered into their court system, and that I'm going to get a notice, because they don't send these to the Secretary of State yet. They may go back and fill in blanks afterwards. Look at where it says for court, right? 14 days. It didn't say where to go to court, but my son, this is my son's ticket, by the way, was told to go to the 3-district court in Montcalm County. There is no 3-district court in Montcalm County. Come on. It's like the 47th district court. Right? And the dude didn't sign his name. Well, he just committed perjury. 15 years. My friends in Michigan, this perjury right here is 15 years in prison. You sure you want to deal with that? Do you want me to take something like this down to the Secretary of State's office and say, hey, Would you see if this is in the system? And when they find out that it isn't, I'm telling you, they're going to come and take your ass to prison. Right? You'll not know the hour of his coming. The dude's just going to show up and take you away. Well, there goes another one for Jesus. Right? You'll go get rehabilitated and come back. You won't do it again, but you could just stop now. What you should do is Monday, whatever day you see this, walk in the next day and arrest the people that send your ass out to do this kind of stuff. They're the problem. But this is a simulated legal process that uses color of law. It's a human rights violation. If you were to go to court with this piece of paper, even though they put the name in first, middle, last, that's not how it's going to show up in the docket. It's going to show up Ritluski, Robert Allen, or whoever's name it is. That's slander against my God-given character. Right? You're trying to throw me into a jurisdiction I don't want to be in, and shame on you. It's stopping now. And this, I'm just telling you, this stuff is coming to an end because we're going to go to the right place instead of following that frickin' red cape or whatever that sorcerer uses behind that desk up there, because that son of a bitch hasn't been elected to the office. Oh, and guess what? This is the greatest thing. Secretary of State has jurisdiction over elections. And I've done plenty of videos. If you don't understand yet that these people aren't elected, well, then you just need to go watch a video. They're not elected. Easy enough to prove. Go asking for their certificate of election. They won't give it to you? Well, they're not elected. But you can go back further than that. You can go see if their election was certified by the State Election Commission. And if it wasn't, well, then they're not elected. Well, you know what that means? They've all taken campaign contributions. That's campaign contribution fraud. And it's from the senators all the way down to the guys at the frickin' school district. When Pope Francis, with any luck, when Pope Francis shows up in America to go before the joint session of Congress, he should see exactly what there is, just a bunch of empty seats, because none of them people are elected, except they won't be there. The people there now will all be in prison, because it was campaign finance fraud. You don't like who's in office? Take it to the Secretary of State and say, we need to go look at these people's paperwork. I don't believe they've been elected. I believe they're all guilty of campaign finance fraud. Right? Come on, where's the politicos out there? You want something to chew on? Here you go. These people aren't elected. Get off your damn ass and go prove me wrong. It can't be done. So in that case, you don't like it, go get rid of them. Hallelujah. And then come back, take care of your tax. It's all through the same people. It's all Secretary of State, same office. But it's really not the Secretary of State. It's the Department of State, of which the Secretary of State administers. Okay, what else can we look at here? Let's see. Let's quick look at just a quick definition of why it says the Tort Court. Right? Any wrong in law, any wrong or injury. Torts are injuries done to persons of property of or property of another, as trespass, assault, battery, defamation. Like those are all common law type things, right? These aren't statutes and codes. These are just time immemorial. If you trespass on somebody's property, well, that's wrong, right? You hit somebody, well, that's assault and battery. You call them bad names or defame them, well, it's defamation. This is common law. A tort in common law jurisdictions is a civil wrong that unfairly causes someone else to suffer loss or harm resulting in legal liability for the person who commits the torturous act. Bad enough that they owe you for your damages. Legal injuries are not limited to physical injuries and may include emotional, economic, reputational injuries, as well as violations of privacy, property, constitutional rights. Well, yeah, that's what I want to complain about. And it's the Secretary of State that has jurisdiction over this, because she has jurisdiction over, in the vehicle code is where they define what a civil infraction is. And that's what these things are, these torts we're talking about. They're really civil infractions of one kind or another. That was so good I had to do it 3 times. Their legal injuries are not limited to physical injuries and may include emotional, economic, reputational, change your name backwards, as well as violations of privacy, stole your freaking identity, trespassed on your property and your constitutional rights, your God-given rights. Tort law also recognizes international or intentional torts where a person has intentionally acted in a way that harms another. So they don't have to even have meant it. If they've harmed you, they still owe you. But if they did mean it, well, there you are. And it goes on. That's what they did with OJ, right? Innocent as far as criminal, later found liable for the tort of wrongful death. And commercial tort. A tort claim where a claimant is an organization or individual and the claim comes from the course of business or profession of the claimant and does not include damages arising out of personal injury to or the death of the individual. Under the Uniform Commercial Code, Article 9, such claims are not accounts. Okay, well, excellent. The Secretary of State has jurisdiction over the UCC. And one of the things in the UCC is the thing about the transmitting utility. And I remember somebody trying to make me the transmitting utility at one time, convinced me I was a transmitting utility. And I was trying to buy it. I was really trying to be the transmitting utility. It sounded good. But when you think about it, no, the transmitting utility is your power company that's selling you electricity. That is what the definition says. And if they want to shut your damn power off, they had better had put a lien in to the UCC or they don't have a claim. And so then you go to the Secretary of State and say, well, there's no claim against me. I don't know how they can be turning my power off. Da, da, da. That's what I'm going to do. I just want, I've been trying a lot of things with the power company because they put a new meter in and all of a sudden I owed them $3,000 out of nowhere. Long story, and I'm not going to get into, I did videos on it. But nevertheless, the place to take it is to go now to see if there's a claim against me, which I've already looked at. And there's one from 2010. I believe that's a IRS one, and I'll take care of that thing also now that I understand. But there isn't any in right now. Right? And the transmitting utilities have to file a claim to perfect their lien. It's the whole idea of the UCC one is, right, to perfect the lien. If you want to perfect a lien, you file with the Secretary of State. This goes for the mortgage on your house. This is why I'm saying you don't have house payments, cops. You don't have to write these bogus checks anymore because you don't have a damn house payment. Because you can go look at the UCC at your Secretary of State and see if there's any liens against your name. And if there isn't one for the mortgage, well, then you don't have a damn house payment. And now you want your property back. And I'll talk more about that. I mean, I've done many videos on this stuff, but I'm going to draw it all forward now, hopefully, and now I know where to take it to. It's never been a matter of being able to find the damn evidence. It's who do you take it to, and duh, it's the Secretary of State. And I'm talking about the people where you get your driver's license at. And that one of the things we're going to find is you go down there and you ask them for a copy of your personal information, the deep personal information. They got a name for the file. And you're going to find an error on that. And when you change that error, it's going to change your status in the system. And you're not going to be in the Babylonian system anymore. It's because there's an error in the record and we haven't corrected it. And the error that it is here in Michigan is you're not on the qualified voter roll properly. A guy in Washington, after talking to him about this last Friday, he went down and checked his, and on the voter roll, they have him in the voter roll with the middle initial. That's wrong answer. No. That's defamation of character. Put my middle name in there. Absolutely. They don't want you to be registered in the system in your proper person. Right now, you're registered in the system with a middle initial. Or some other variation, right? This is just the easy way to explain it because for most people it is what it is. But continuing on, business, that's what occupies the time. Why was I looking at that? Oh, because these commercial claims come out of things to do with business, right? And one of them is, well, I always like to see what the definitions of things are. And Webster says that which occupies the time, attention, and labor of men for the purpose of profit or improvement a word extensive use and indefinite signification, right? It's my frickin' business. Leave me alone. But this is the best one ever. It should be the main business of life to serve God and obey His commands. And if we could all do that, the righteous would rule and peace would reign. And that's what we're going to do. The righteous are going to be the ones that go do this. The rest of them are going to sit on their frickin' ass and wait. But the righteous will get up and go put the paper in and see it through to the end. Hoorah! A violation of a duty imposed by general law or otherwise upon all persons occupying the relation to each other, which is involved in a given transaction. You can't lie, cheat, and steal. It's just that simple. If you do, you're going to damage somebody, and if you do damage somebody, well, then you may have to pay a penalty. Oh, there could be government torts. You mean the government might do something wrong? They may step on your civil liberties, your constitutional rights. Well, yeah. Okay. Remember this for later. I put it here, but a test, right? To certify by signature or oath, a test of will. To certify in an official capacity. To put under oath, right? So a test means to do something officially. So the way I look at it is I can't attest anything. I can attest that you did something because I've seen you do it, right? But I can only swear to the fact I did it. And then somebody has to certify that I did. So the attester would be the person rendering you an oath. And this goes back to this thing of the other duties of the Secretary of State. Now remember, she's over the vehicle code. She's over elections, and none of them people are elected, and so that is voter or election campaign fraud. And she's over this role they call the voter. Well, we'll just read about it. The Secretary of State shall maintain a computer system and program necessary to operate a qualified voter roll. Doesn't mean you're voting. It means you're qualified to vote. In Michigan, it tells us what you need to do to be qualified to vote. You got to be over 18 and living within the state. And a citizen of the United States. And the state. And we'll look at that definition. This is where that, when the if things are uppercase or lowercase make it different. Because this Secretary of State, as you can see, is always lowercase, right? I don't know that we're even talking about the Secretary of State that I can find online that says it's the Secretary of State. But I do know from what I read, the Secretary of State has lowercase, has jurisdiction over the Michigan Vehicle Code, and that the Secretary of State will have these branch offices, and in these branch offices will be a person who's been appointed by the Secretary of State to represent the Secretary of State. So for all intents and purposes, that person that I just walked into in my local branch office here in Greenville, Michigan, is the Secretary of State. And they have an official seal that says Secretary of State on it, or whatever the hell it says. And that's the seal they're going to put on your paperwork. It won't be a frickin' notary public seal. It'd be a seal that says official seal. Okay, so that Secretary of State, whoever that is, the Secretary of State shall allow each county, city, township, village access to the qualified voter file. They can have access to it, but they can't add or subtract, right? So they only have access to it. They get to look at it. The county, city, township clerks shall verify the accuracy of the names and addresses of the registered voters in a qualified voter file. And this is the game that they're going to play in this stuff is you would go and do it one place, and then somebody's going to send you a letter, and if you don't respond to the letter, then you're not going to actually have been transferred to the proper book. Right? So you'd have to keep your eye on the mail. Right? Qualified voter file that consists of all qualified electors. You're not a registered qualified elector, just that you are a qualified elector. A driver's license, or if there's no driver's license, a state personal ID, including renewals. Right? So what this is Secretary of State shall compile this list from the following sources and in the following priority. So when you go and do this, you're going to be taking care of this driver's license, which isn't necessarily the operator's license they give you, because you went to the wrong person to ask for the driver's license. But nevertheless, they're going to be the same. So, a person whose name does not appear otherwise in the qualified voter file shall be placed in the qualified voter file only if the person signs, under penalty of perjury, an application that contains an attestation, which means you need to take an oath, which means somebody needs to give you the oath, that the applicant meets all the following requirements. 17 and a half, is a citizen of the United States, and this state, lowercase state, is resident of a city or township where the person's street address is located. Not your street address. You're a resident of a city or township in Michigan. You're a resident of a municipality, and you have a street address in it. But all you're saying is, yeah, and I reside within, for myself, the township of Oakfield. I am 17 and a half or older. I am a citizen of the United States in this state, and I am a resident of the township of Oakfield. Again, it's lowercase state. Right? I didn't write it this way. They did. And so they know what they're doing. Uppercase states, one jurisdiction. Propercase states, another jurisdiction. Lowercase state. This is the unorganized federal district, in my opinion, because the state offices have all been vacated because none of the people are elected. Well, then who's running the government? Well, then it would just be the federal, because federal and state had parallel sovereignty throughout the lands. And if the state went away, it doesn't mean that the federal did. Well, then the federal has jurisdiction. It's crazy. Don't ask me. And then they're going to play some games, right? So the designated voter registration agency shall not add to, delete, or change any information contained in the qualified voter file during the period beginning on the 7th day before an election and ending on the day of the election. Wonder why that is. If a voter is sent notice under 509A, blah, 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 to confirm the voter's residence, the Secretary of State shall place the registration record of the voter in the inactive file. Okay, so this gets kind of... I'm going to stop in this right now, this part. Because don't mean to spend so much time on the election other than to say that there's a defect in your records, and the records that have the defect have to do with the Secretary of State. And that in Michigan, if you go to your local office, you can get, for $9, they have all these different kinds of records you can get. But one of them is your personnel information record. And that's the one you want to check. But if you have a ticket, right, there's no reason not to go down there. I guess I closed it with the ticket I had. And see if it's if it shows up in your driver's record. Right? Because again, the Secretary of State is supposed to be the one that sends you a notice, and they have the official record of your existence as a driver. And so if they don't have it in their system, and you have a copy of a ticket in your hand, somebody else other than you has a problem. Okay, hang on just a second. Okay, traffic, commerce, trade, sale, exchange, merchandise, bills, money, and the like. The passing of goods, commodities from one person to another. Traffic. Traffic and non-traffic civil infraction matters. Now, this is from the court. Right? So, commerce and non-commerce civil infraction matters. Traffic means commerce. It's got nothing to do with the car. It's commerce. Right? And you go to traffic court. You just went to commerce court. A commerce civil infraction case begins when law enforcement officers issues a uniform law citation. That was the form I showed earlier. I should probably get that and show it again. It's not that hard to find. So give me just a second. Every state's going to have something that looks like this. The uniform. Right? State of Michigan Uniform Law Citation. That's what they're talking about in this blah blah we're about to read. Uniform law citation, ticket, claiming that you have violated a Michigan vehicle code or a local ordinance that is similar to the Michigan vehicle code. See, it's not the Michigan motor vehicle code, it's just the Michigan vehicle code. What's a vehicle? Well, your body's a vehicle. It's a vessel, because that covers vehicles and vessels. You got an earthen vessel, and you've been registered using the Torts system. For an offense which penalty does not include a jail sentence. Okay, so that's a commerce civil infraction. And then you got a non-commerce civil infraction. Well, same thing, that you violated a state civil infraction law, which would be something out of the vehicle code, or a municipal civil infraction, which would be an ordinance. But a city cop can only, and a city police and the city court can only enforce ordinances. They don't have any jurisdiction over state infractions. That's under the Secretary of State, and I don't believe she gave them any frickin' authority. Okay. Now, we should look at any number of things I want to cover just to drill this into your head, right? Because so in Michigan today it says the Department of State is the oldest department of Michigan state government and administered by the Secretary of State. In the event of concurrent vacancies in the office of governor and lieutenant governor, including absentees from the state, the Secretary of State serves as the governor. Well, I don't believe that the governor or the lieutenant governor have been properly elected, so they are absent from the state, and that just made this woman here the governor. She is the chief elections officer, and none of these people are elected, chief. Right? And that's on your watch, and so you're responsible. I know that we have an election board and an election commission and so forth, but you're the chief election officer, and these people aren't elected, and they all took campaign finance money, and you got a little bit of prosecuting to do. What else they got? Protects consumers. Oversees state election process. Maintains many important records of state and local governments, including state statutes and commercial financing statements, UCC. Administers the Notary Public program. Operates the Office of the Great Seal, right? That's why she's the chancellor. She has the highest seal. But then it's broken into, and I'm not going to go through all these, but see, it's broken into all these different, the Bureau branch offices, the Bureau of Drivers and Vehicle Programs, the Office of Consumer or Customer Service. If you Google any of those, you don't really find them. They don't have a website. There is no Customer Service Administration website. You put these words in, they're going to the computer is going to try to send you something that looks just about the same. And all I can tell you is, if it ain't the same, it ain't the same. Everything has a legal name. You have a legal name. These things have a legal name. There's only one way for the name to be. That's your proper name, legal name. If it isn't that way, it's a simulated legal process. Someone's lying to you. Just make sure, right, that you're talking to the people that you think you are. And so, if you want to know if the judge is actually the judge that they say they are because they were elected, well, then ask to see their certificate of election. Or go to the state election board and say, I need to see your certification that this judge was elected. And if they don't have that stuff, you can say, well, I can see here from the Secretary of State's website where this guy took campaign finance money and you're telling me he's not elected. Well, that should be campaign finance fraud. He took the money to be elected. He won, but he didn't take the office. He just took the money. That's a crime. And that's what they didn't see coming. But that one I showed was from now, and they've done the same thing numerous times before, and there's just one, because this explained it better in a particular place. I just want to find this one little thing. They have a thing called the Bureau of Legal Services. Serves as the Department of State's representative on legal matters involving the Attorney General, the legal community, and the public. Oh, You don't go to the bar to bring a complaint against an attorney. You take it to the Secretary of State and say, hey, they're using the middle initial, and for them to practice law within the state of Michigan, they need to use the name that's on their license. The Bureau drafts administrative rules and prepares declaratory rulings and statements interpreting law and department policy. It prepares contracts and operating agreements for Bureau within the department. The Bureau handles all contested case hearings involving the Department of State. Well, you're bringing your complaint to the Department of State, complaining about the actions of others within the state. This is the only office that can hold the hearing. Outstanding, right? It's not the black robe priest, it's the lowercase Secretary of State. The Department of State's representative, right? That's what we're looking for. I want the Department of State's representative. So, Bureau of Legal Services, I'm going to try to be talking to them real soon. But just to show you, I mean, hearing rules, right? Procedures for conducting hearings. Department of State, Bureau of Legal Services. Procedure for conducting hearings. If you've been charged with a violation of something that the Secretary of State has jurisdiction over, this is the procedure that would be used to conduct your hearing. But that isn't where they send you to. Board of Canvassers. Department of State. So again, now the Department of State is over elections. Board means the Board of State Canvassers. Bureau means the Bureau of Elections of the Department of State. Hearing means hearing on canvass of a nominating petition held pursuant to some section. Well, yeah, we may have one of them. And say, well, did you guys canvass this petition to see who won? Secretary of the Board means the Director of Elections appointed by the Secretary of State. Okay, well, that's who, and then the reason that's important is legal process may be served on the Secretary of the Board. Well, who's the Secretary of the Board? Oh, it's the Director of Elections as appointed by the Secretary of State. Well, who's the Director of Elections? Right? We're trying to burrow down to who are they talking about? But the Bureau serves as the office for the Board. So for me, if I have an election question, although we do have a Board of State Canvassers, I'm supposed to take my questions to the Bureau because the Bureau has provided the Secretary of the Board, and the Secretary of the Board is going to be called the Director of Elections appointed by the Secretary of State. Okay. Well, as it turns out, if you look, you can find something like this where it will show you, like Michigan, it's this Christopher M. Thomas, Director, Bureau of Elections. That's the guy that was appointed by the Secretary of State. So, contact information for every state board of elections. If you just Google that phrase, you're going to find this PDF, and they give you a link right to the person, write them an email, and say, I don't believe that anybody holding office, I believe that very few people holding office had their elections certified by the, whoever certifies them. We got State Board of Canvassers here that are supposed to certify them. They're supposed to take all this stuff, look at it, and write a certificate that says, yep, we've counted it, and yep, John Doe won the election. And once that's happened, then the governor can give John Doe a certificate of election. But they don't have any of that. When I was talking about elections, maybe 2 or 3 videos before, pointed out that in Illinois, Roe got from Senator Durbin's office, although he's not a senator, so Durbin's office, them speaking for the senator, Durbin, that they didn't have access to the records of the president of the Senate to give Roe a copy of the certificate of election that was supposed to have been given to the president of the Senate of the United States as part of his taking office. He doesn't have a copy. He can't get a copy from. He doesn't have access to the president of the secretary. No, how did it go? The president of the Senate of the United States. The election board doesn't know where one is. They say, well, that would have been issued by the Secretary of State's index office, and they say, well, we've already told you we didn't do that. He doesn't have one. He's not a senator. You can look at what they're supposed to do, like the U.S. representatives. You know, on the very first day they take office, they're supposed to have a ceremony for the oath, and then subscribe the oath, 2 copies, and give them to the clerk, who's supposed to put one in one book and one in another book. And this should have all happened on the very first day of the election, or when they take office, and they didn't do it. And 25 days later, you find it in one book, but not in the other. It's all crazy, right? I'm just telling you, they're not. If you don't want to take my advice, or if you don't want to take my word for it, and I just assume you didn't, just go down and pick somebody and have whoever was supposed to certify their election certify it. If they can't, well, then they're not elected. Or just call one of these offices in your place and say, I just don't believe they are. How could we find out for sure? I don't want to, and that's what you tell them, I don't want to, bear false witness against anybody, for lack of a better term. But these are the offices that are supposed to be over the election, so they should know if anybody's been certified or not. Did your office certify the election of whoever it is that's holding office? Right? FOIA is what I'm talking about. Okay. But when they don't, right? State of Michigan, Bureau of Elections. A person who believes that election authority has violated or will violate a provision of Title III of the Help America Vote Act that concerns an election for a federal office may file a complaint with the Michigan Department of State's Bureau of Elections pursuant to these guidelines. Okay, well, they're showing you how to do a particular complaint, but, this is where you have to ask them, well, what are your other complaint processes? What if I believe that nobody's been properly elected? Where's that complaint? Who do I give that to? Will you please take my testimony? You just pile it on them. Okay, and so that was election, right? And sure enough, here's the UCC, Uniform Commercial Code. Let me just read the first part. An act to enact the Uniform Commercial Code relating to certain commercial transactions and or regarding personal property, contracts, and other documents concerning them, including sales, commercial paper, bank deposits, collections, letters of credit, bulk transfer, warehouse receipts, bills of lading, other documents of title, investment securities, leases, and secured transactions, including certain sales of accounts, chattel paper, contract rights to provide for public notice to third parties in certain circumstances, yada, yada, yada. Anyways, the Secretary of State has jurisdiction over this. If you wanted to know what court has jurisdiction, that's the Secretary of State. And they have administrative hearings, and so, we're going to figure out how to use this and get them for not following the UCC. But you don't go to the Black Robe Priest for the UCC, you go to the Secretary of State. Filing. Let's see what we got here. Filing statement means a record that indicates under UCC section something or other, 9518, the finance statement is inaccurate and wrongfully filed. Okay, file number means unique identifying number assigned to the initial financing statement by filing officer for the purpose of identifying the initial financing statement and permanently associating the initial financing statement with all financing statements related to it in the UCC information management system. The filing number bears no relation to the time of filing and is not an indicator of priority. But it is a number that's going to, by reference, anything else associated with it would be tied to it. So getting the file number is a good place to start if you have something against you, and then say, well, what other associated documents might there be? Filing office, right? The office of the Secretary of State or its successor. So the Secretary of State's got jurisdiction. Beautiful. UCC search requests may be delivered to the filing office by any of the means by which financial statements may be delivered to the filing office. A request for expediting may also be delivered by telephone. Right? So it's simple enough to find out if there's any liens against you. But if you're in a foreclosure again, I would be making sure that at least one of the searches is exactly how the name shows up as the defendant. Or take the case down with you and say, well, you look these names up and see if there's any UCC filings against these names and let them do it. A check made payable to the state of Michigan. That's good to see. That's the right jurisdiction. Okay, I don't mean to go through all that. I just had lots of neat little pieces of paper that's just better to show sometimes, and you can see how they all fit together. Come on. If you believe someone has violated Michigan Campaign Finance Act, yes, I do. You may file a violation. You may file a written complaint with the Department of State. I shall. The complaint must include all the following: your name and address and telephone number. The alleged violator's name and address. You know how you find out if somebody's been elected? If you can't get their oath or find their bond. They're not elected. Quit looking for it. Go put a complaint in to the Secretary of State for campaign finance violation because the dude's not elected. Yet you can go on their site and find all sorts of information about him. All right, so boom. Do all that stuff and send it to the Michigan Department of State, Bureau of Elections, Richard A. Austin Building. That's what I'll be doing. Put it on my list. What is this one? Oh, Michigan Campaign Finance Act. Outstanding. Contribution means payment, gift, subscription, assessment, expenditure, contract, payment for services, dues, advance, forbearance, loan, donation of money, or anything of ascertainable monetary value. Doesn't need to be dollars in hand. Can be stuff in kind. Or a transfer of anything of ascertainable monetary value to a person made for the purpose of influencing the nomination of an election of a candidate, for the qualification, passage, defeat of a ballot question, for the qualification of a new political party. Okay, so you can use this. If somebody puts something on the ballot they want to have elected or have voted on, right? Did they put that on the ballot properly? If not, well, you can get it for contribution fraud. Contribution includes the full purchase price of tickets, a payment of an attendance for the event, such as the dinners, lunches, and rallies. Yada, yada, yada. You guys can get a lot of trouble. Elective office means public office filled by an election. A person who is appointed to fill a vacancy in a public office that is ordinarily elective holds an elective office. And that's really what's happening right now, if there's anything happening, is the elected offices aren't being filled because the people running for office have a defect. And they're not citizens of the United States, basically. They're not properly registered. The stuff talked about earlier with the Secretary of State, they haven't necessarily done that either. So they can't hold the office, but they have all the other qualifications, and so somehow then they're appointed to the office. Well, for them to be appointed, somebody would have to be there, and you get appointed by the governor, but the governor isn't there. But we just read, well, if the governor and the lieutenant governor are both out of the state, then the Secretary of State is the governor. Oh, okay. But it isn't necessarily the proper case Secretary of State or the uppercase Secretary of State. It's the lowercase Secretary of the State. Right? So it does get a bit confusing, but what I've narrowed it down to in my own head is that at the branch offices, there's somebody who's been appointed by the Secretary of the State. The rest may all just be employees, but somebody's been appointed to the office. And that is your Secretary of State. And so ask them for a copy of their appointment papers. And then you'll know who the real Secretary of the State is. In-kind contribution or expense means contribution expenditures other than money. Okay, so I had one other bunch of things I wanted to show. Where did I put them? All right. Here we go. Jeff out in Washington, after I talked to him last week, he got this from certification of registration, right? I, Mary Hall, Thurston County Auditor, in the county and state aforesaid, and keeper of the records and files thereof, do hereby certify that the following is a true and correct certification of the registration record of Jeffrey M. McNeil. That's incorrect. But that's what they have. She's certifying that's what's in the record. And that, to me, means, well, then the record's obviously incorrect. Go down and fix it. And when you make that say Jeffrey Mark McNeil instead of Jeff M. McNeil, and if your name is Jeff, I don't know, Jeff, are you Jeff or Jeffrey? Right? Your proper person name. What's this? Oh, okay. I'm going to show you how they get you. If you say, are you a citizen of the United States of America, and you check yes, well, then you can't be a citizen of the United States. If you say you're a citizen of the United States of America, you just went to the tombstone jurisdiction of Ritluski, Robert Allen. And if I wasn't so lazy, I'd go find my passport thing and show you again. But just Google a passport, right, and go look at the images. And look at the page where the picture is and what it says on that page. And it's going to say United States of America on it. And your name's going to be backwards. It's going to be Ritluski, Ritluski on one line, Robert Allen on another line, USA, yada, yada, yada. And you go look at the page at the top of that, and there'll be this writing that says that, talking about the citizen and the national of the United States, herein named. It'll be above where your signature is. But there is nobody named herein from there to where the signature is, or anywhere else in the book. In your passport, you're not going to find your proper person. You know, right? That's because that's the jurisdiction of the United States of America. You wouldn't check this. You check no, or I'd cross the thing out. I'm not going to fill this one out. I'm just saying this is the thing. And then they want your name to be backwards. Right? Well, that is the United States of America. Ritluski, Robert Allen. Right? I don't want that jurisdiction. And then, because then down here, they want you to read, sign, and date. And I certify I'm a citizen of the United States. I'm telling you, a citizen of the United States is different than saying you're a citizen of the United States of America. So, this is the form that most people who would go to think to vote would be filling out, and they would be self-confessing into the wrong jurisdiction because they didn't understand the form and they didn't ask any questions, and they're not going to ask you if you knew what you were doing. They're going to go ahead and let you do it. So this is the wrong registration form as far as I can see. So, okay. Should be able to find out on that tomorrow. Now, as I mentioned, here in Michigan, Secretary of State, they have your official driving record. And they have all these different piece parts you can go get, or you can get the whole thing. But here's an example from Jeff, who got one for something that happened to him. abstract of 3-year driving record. I don't know that you need to have this one, right? I think the one that you need to have is the one that for personal information. But I can see where you would use this. If you went down and said, give me my last 3-year driver thing, and what you're going to court for today, or what they've charged you with, isn't listed on there, well, then you ain't been charged with it. And they put an official seal. State of Washington, Department of Licensing, official seal. That's about as real as it gets. If you were to put that in court and say, well, Judge, that doesn't show up on mine anyplace. But see, they got his name backwards, right? Welcome to the machine. McNeil Jeffrey Mark. It should be Jeffrey Mark McNeil. This is incorrect. But this information here is coming from their personnel record and pulling it up. Right? All these things are compartmentalized. If you hear an air conditioner in the back, please forgive me. I hope it's not too loud. But we're about done. These are important to get an idea. Office Secretary of State, Driver Service Department. If you want to get your driver's abstract, right, enter the driver's license number and or name. Don't put your name, just put the driver's license number. See what comes up. Requester's identity. Right, so now you put your information again because this is you. But I'm never going to put a middle initial, right? All my names are my first name. I have to show you. I'm a saint in the church. Robert Allen Michael, that's my first name. Ritluski's my last name. I'm confirmed in the church. I should have citizenship in the Holy See, but the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops doesn't see it my way yet. They will. It's just a matter of time. But, I'm not ever using a middle initial. So, Robert Allen Michael Ritluski. Address, so forth, you'd fill out. Anyway, so you fill this out, but what Rose said is, because you can get this information even if it isn't for you. And Rose said she has seen attorneys filling this out at the, I believe it would be the Court of Chancery. Unless that's the circuit court window. I can't remember what they called it, but it's in the old courthouse. Well, I don't remember. I'm not going to say where she saw them filling them out. She's been in more than one courthouse in her county, but they were filling this out. Obviously getting somebody else's information. But you can, this is the form you use to get yours. And I don't know how to fill it out. In fact, I don't even know what they are yet. I just know that, here's a form, and you could go and you could request your information. And one of the things I'm really sure of is that they have our name improper, so I want that information. Okay, here's like an abstract. One of the things they're supposed to do with this, right, is if you're tried in a local court, they're supposed to send an abstract here to the Secretary of State, it looks like. This is in Illinois. In Arizona, it looks like all this is under the Department of Transportation because they say they have jurisdiction over the code. It's okay. I don't really care what they call themselves. But it isn't necessarily the Department of Transportation uppercase that you find a website for, right? That you need to go to this local office. That is your local circuit court clerk, your frickin' county clerk, your everything clerk. But on this thing, this is for Kane County, because if you're from Illinois, you'll see this, right? Circuit Court, Kane County, 16th Municipal District. It's not, they say that they're the 16th Judicial District. Right? But this is a municipal district. And they got Rose's name backwards. And she had her supervision revoked. And Roe did something in court. Her and her husband, they were studying stuff and trying things at the time. And they ended up keeping Rose's driver's license, but she had said some things to him that really got the judge's attention. And then sometime later, she got pulled over and not having a seatbelt on or something, I think it was. And the cop came up to her and asked for her driver's license, and she said, "The court's got my driver's license." And he said, "Well, what do they have it for?" And she said, "Well, you have to ask them. They got it." The guy went back to his car, and he made a call, and a little bit later, his lights went on and his siren, like emergency. And he sat there for a couple minutes with that stuff going on, and apparently he was writing something down or doing whatever he was doing. I don't know what it was, but eventually he came back up and gave Roe whatever she had given him, like the registration for the car, and told her to have a good day. Well, come to find out, you look at this thing, whatever supervision revoked means something, because they didn't find her guilty or not guilty or forfeiture. No. Supervision revoked. And so the next time she got pulled over without having a driver's license, they ended up flicking the lights on in their car and sitting there like it was an emergency. Like they say, "Oh, we got to change the jurisdiction because she's not under supervision." And again, they use an official seal on this. And it says mail to Secretary of State, Driver Service Department. Now, they did this with this ticket. But when she asked the court in her other case she had, they said they only send it, because this is like a city court here. Now she's in the Kane County 16th Judicial Circuit for apparently disturbing the peace, because she asked the county recorder why she's paying $46 for a $6 certificate. And I guess the county recorder didn't have a good enough answer, so decided, well, we'll harass you a bit. I did lots of videos on it, and at the end of the day, Roe's still walking the streets, and that recorder didn't look too good when Roe saw her in court last time, and in that case, they said that Roe was not guilty. That was the verdict, not guilty. Well, Roe tried to find one of these for that court case, and she was told, "Well, we don't send one to the state, we just send one to the court administrator," or something like that. So they were supposed to, but the reason they didn't is because they never sent it to the state in the first place. They were charging Roe with a state infraction on hers too, and because they couldn't get what they wanted out of her, they couldn't send it to the state to say we got her to consent that that's what she was doing, that she was, guilty of the civil infraction. They're trying to get you to confess in a black robe priest court, so they can say, "Well, we can't charge you for doing it, but you did say that you were going to do it, and so we're going to give you a penance for having such evil thoughts." So says the black robe priest. Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles, right? Different in Florida, but request for disclosure of personal information on your ticket, or not on your ticket, on your driver's thing. You can either do it for your driver's license or, for your vehicle. I'm saying for myself right now, I want to know about me. What's the deep down dirty, all the way to the bottom of the barrel? What does it say in my record so I can get anything changed I need to be changed, because this is in the record of the Tort Court, the one that's under the Secretary of State. I can take any changes to them and say, well, this record is incorrect. Okay, we're about done. What do we got? But, if you don't like, for me, this is what I do. I do this all day long, right? So if I'm boring you, please forgive me. Personal information, including highly restricted personal information as described in 18 U.S.C. 2725. What are you talking about, Rob? Well, 18 U.S.C. 2725. Whatever that highly restricted personal information is, if you want to get it, you need to fill out the form to ask for it. And it's like Privacy Act stuff, right? You need to give them permission to go get the information because it's private. And when they get it, you're going to say, well, this private information is incorrect. Proper person, right? No middle initials, no nothing. The way mom and dad meant you to be named is how it should be on your record. Michigan Department of State requesting your own record. Right? Driver's records are $9 when purchased at the Secretary of State Plus or Supercenter branch offices. No forms required. Put your name first, middle, last. That's good. Yep. And then driver's record or personal identification on card, driving record or personal identification on card information for employment only, credit, insurance, court, other. Well, other, because it's mine. Right, but then you can get all these other ones like original license issue date, current application, application history, address history. Right, address history. That's another one. What addresses are they using for me? Because somehow I haven't found the link yet, but in Michigan, when you have a foreclosure, you go to district court, and the words they use and what the stuff says, it's a landlord-tenant relationship. Right? They're using words of landlord-tenant relationship in these documents, which isn't a foreclosure like you own the property. It's like you're a tenant and you're being kicked out of the property by your landlord. Well, I thought I was the owner. Well, you're not, because you don't have the legal title. I mean, you should be, but somebody else has the legal title. And I think all that has to be done under the UCC. And so they're opening a case somehow in the Secretary of State's office that we don't know about. And then prosecuting it over here in this Black Robe Priest Court to try to get our consent that that they were correct. I don't know how they're doing it. Be quite honest. Maybe they're not. Maybe that's how they should do it, and they're not. They just started it over here because I don't believe they do anything properly at the Secretary of State's office, but they should have. And if you're in a foreclosure, really, the first thing you need to do is stop watching this video when it's done and go to your Secretary of State's website and see if there's any liens against your name. And if you got a ticket, go down there and find out if the ticket's been put in against your name. And if not, say, well, then how do I file a complaint? And come back and tell me how you did it. Do a video on it. So, okay. You know what? I'm thinking that's about all I had to say. It was a lot. I had other things to cover, but it's probably getting to be too much for one video. So, somewhere right, you're going to find something that tells you about your Department of State. That's one way to look at it. Or start with the fact, okay, who has jurisdiction over the that's what I'm going to show you. One last thing. Who has jurisdiction over the vehicle code? Let's start there, because all that's happened is we're being charged with vehicle code violations. Forgive me for this, but you are being let me do this. Okay, Michigan Vehicle Code, Act 300, 1949. First thing to notice, it's like 357 pages long. That seems like a lot of law for me to drive down to Myers to buy some groceries. But that's how many are in it. So that's kind of telling. But everything that I found that I've talked about so far is really like in the first 35 pages. Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff afterwards that fills it in, but what you need to do first is go to the definitions. which is, of course, at the beginning. And start looking at definitions, right? Like, well, what was that one for some reason? Cancellation means a license or regulation or registration is annulled and terminated because of some error or defect, or because the license or registrant is no longer entitled to such license or registration. But the cancellation of the license or registration is without prejudice, and application for new license or registration may be made at any time after such cancellation. So your driving privileges may have been canceled because you never properly registered as a qualified elector within a precinct or within the city, because that's part of claiming a domicile. You're not showing that you're a resident of the state. Yeah, I know you filled out other paperwork and you think you did, but guess what? That was lie, and it didn't get in the right records. You went to the wrong jurisdiction. You went to people that want to be your agent between you and what you need to do with the government. Consumers power. They're not the utility. They want to be my agent between me and the utility. And they're going to tell me what to do because now they're my agent. They're going to tell me they're the utility, but when I go and look them up, they don't exist as the utility. They were never the utility. Right? It's agency. The city of St. Charles in Illinois, it's not a city. It's a C Corp. They put it on a damn W-9. We asked for their W-9 for the city. It said they were a C Corp. Right? Well, okay, then what are they? Well, they want to be your agent. They want you to go to them, and then they'll go to whoever needs to be done from, and they'll charge you a fee for it. And it's a pretty healthy fee, apparently. But back to cancellation, right? So because we haven't gone to the right jurisdiction to do the right thing to be done because there's a problem in our personnel information, whatever it is, right? Our driving privileges have been canceled, and that doesn't mean your operator's license. Your operator's license means you know how to operate the car. Your driver's license means you have the right to be on the right-of-way. So let's call it the right-of-way permit. Because, again, the right-of-way is built on people's private property. It was taken by eminent domain or however it was taken, but it's still their property. If they ever quit using the road, the property goes back to the owner. But it's the right-of-way. It's on private property. And, you know, they want people to, if you want to be on the state roads, you need to be registered in the state. And pay your frickin' general taxes. The commission means Commissioner of the Michigan Police. Okay, that's fine. Department. The department means the Department of State. Okay, well, excellent. Right? Page 7. Who's the department? Well, that's the Department of Michigan State. Means the Department of State. Means the Department of State. And this goes on and on. This is kind of hard for me to read, so because there are a few that I want to show you that really stand out. Proof of financial liability, right? In damages for liability on the account in the amount of $20,000, $40,000, $10,000. Really, that's all the insurance you have to have. On account of accidents occurring subsequent to effective date of the proof arising out of the ownership, maintenance, or use of a motor vehicle. Some kind of liability, right? Why can't you have a bond? I believe you can. I believe that we don't talk to the right people about these things. We keep going to these agents that are between us and what we need to have done. Prosecuting attorney, registration. Means a registration certificate, plate, adhesive tab, or other indicator of registration issued under this act displayed on a vehicle. It can be lots of things. Registration taxes, right? So in Michigan, it should cost $29 to register your vehicle. Probably it would be over $100 if you go to the thing and do it the way they want you to. Residence address. Of course, it's been a long time. I should be careful how I say it works. I don't really know how it works. I just know it's $29 according to that thing to register a vehicle. Residence address means the place that the settled home or domicile Oh, it's all about domicile. At which a person legally resides, as defined in Section 11 of the Michigan Vehicle Code. So of the Michigan election law. So the Michigan Vehicle Code is telling you to go to the Michigan election law to find out what it means to have a residence address, which is going to be the domicile of a person legally resides. Residence, as used in this act for registration and voting purposes, means, right, for registration and voting purposes. I just want to do it to register. I'm not worried about voting. I want to register. Means that place at which a person habitually sleeps, keeps his or her personal effects, and has a regular place of lodging. Well, what's a place? According to Webster's, a place is a city, town, or village. It's your domicile. It's not your house address. It's your domicile. Resident means every person who resides in this state, so you've complied with the residence, and establishes that he or she is legally present in the United States. I'm a citizen of the United States. This definition applies to the provision of this act only. So this is back into the vehicle code. Right? They have their definition of resident. It's not going to be necessarily anywhere else but here. But when they use the word resident, they mean every person who resides in the state and establishes that he or she is legally present in the United States is a resident. There's nothing wrong with that kind of resident. Right-of-way means the privilege of the immediate use of the highway. Yes, I need to have access to the right-of-way. Oh, jeepers, I forgot to point that out. That's one other big thing here. Man, I'm glad I'm doing this. Hang on just a second. Well, we'll get to it in a second. No, I better do it now because I'll forget. Give me just 1 second. Hopefully. The Secretary of State also has jurisdiction over building permits. And what do you need a building? The building code says all the reasons you have to have one, and one is the use and occupancy of buildings. And you don't have a certificate of occupancy for your house or a certificate of use. What's a building code? Controls all matters concerning construction, alteration, addition, repair, removal, use, location, occupancy, and maintenance of all buildings and structures and their service equipment. And we don't have this. Now, Bob in Arizona has been on him like a dog on a good bone out in Arizona, and he's got the city, they don't know which way to turn. He's got them boxed in, and now we're going to say, oh, we go to the state and say, the reason I'm telling you this is because they're not going to want to give it to you. And you can go to the Secretary of State for complaints against local units of government for not enforcing the frickin' building code. And the building code says I need to have a certificate of occupancy or use of the building, so give me one. So here, that would be at the Township of Oakfield. But it's really not the Township of Oakfield. When you go and look, what they did is they created a planning commission. And it's the planning commission that has jurisdiction over the oh, jeepers. What do you call it? The zoning board, or the zoning ordinances. And it's the zoning ordinances that say, in Section 18 of mine, I believe it is, that I need to have a certificate of occupancy to use it. Right? A building permit doesn't mean you're building the building necessarily. It means the building is there and you have a permit to use it. Because we're not supposed to be buying and selling houses anyways. We're just going to use it. You should be able to walk up to an empty building and say, yeah, I'm going to use that one right there. If nobody else got a claim against it, let me go down and check with the city. Nope, yeah, I'll go ahead and use it. And you may make changes to it, make it better and whatever. And you could live there for as long as you lived, and you could give it to your kids, and you could do whatever you wanted. But as soon as you guys stop using it, somebody else can use it. You don't sell it. All right. Anyways, the Secretary of State can get you your use permit, and the Secretary of State, exclusive state agent, except as provided in this Act. The Secretary of State is the exclusive state agent for the administration of the driver's license provisions of this Act. Now, they have provisions for operators' licenses and commercial driver's licenses and state IDs and all sorts of things. Well, then, but the one for driver's license is the Secretary of State as the exclusive state agent. You've got to go to the Secretary of State. I don't even want to go to their employees. I want to go to the person that is appointed as the Secretary of State. Except as provided in this Act, the Secretary of State shall observe, enforce, and administer this Act. Again, so all the vehicle code is under the administration of the Secretary of State, and if you've been charged with a state vehicle code violation, then it's the Secretary of State that better be sending you the notice. Or somebody didn't tell the Secretary of State. And when you go down and tell the Secretary of State and show them the court case you're involved in and say, I was charged with this code violation here, and how come I didn't get a notice from you? They're going to say, well, we didn't know anything about it. And you say, well, then I think we need to file a complaint. The Secretary of State shall not establish a highway patrol. Right? This is the beautiful thing. They're going to enforce it and administer it, but they're not the highway patrol. So who just stopped you on the side of the road? Who just stopped you? Right? I guess, these people, they could charge you with that, but they would have to send it to the Secretary of State, and that's not what they're doing. The evidence of that is you getting served by somebody other than the Secretary of State, that you've got a ticket that you're supposed to come take care of. And that other jurisdiction, they can only charge you with an ordinance violation. The Secretary of State may promulgate rules of the public acts as amended. Well, that's the whole, if they can promulgate rules pursuant to 306 of Public Acts 19, that's the Michigan Administrative Code. And the Secretary of State may adopt an official seal. And we saw Washington State's example of it. A conviction, civil infraction, determination, or other licensing action that is entered against a person for a violation of this Act or a local ordinance substantially corresponding to this Act, or that reporting to the Secretary of State by another jurisdiction. What is this? Well, this is the central file they're supposed to have, where all these things are supposed to be put in there. Okay. Here we go. This last part, and then I'm done. Secretary of State office and branch offices. The Secretary of State shall maintain an office in the state capitol complex and in all other places in the state. Again, this is all lowercase state, as the Secretary of State considers necessary to carry out the powers and duties vested in the Secretary of State. So the Secretary of State is going to create branch offices, give people the power to carry out the powers of the Secretary of State. So that person standing in front of you at your branch office is the Secretary of State. At least one office shall be established in each county. Well, that makes him the county clerk in the lowercase of the state, and in each city of the state having a population of 10,000 or more, but not within 5 miles, blah, blah. So they can have as many as they want. But they got two different kinds. You got branch or fee office. Well, it's the branch office that has the power, in my opinion. I don't know. The fee office, I think, are the other people working in the same office, the ones that you would normally go to get your plates. They're doing that for a fee. They became your agent. The one you want is the person sitting in the room all by themselves that got the picture next to them. Been appointed, because here we go. Secretary of State shall not be held personally liable for a loss of money because of armed robbery, larceny, embezzlement, riot, act of God, or other act of person resulting in loss of money, and which was within the authority and responsibility of the Secretary of State as the administrator of this Act. Right? If you had gone to them, they could have done something about it. Because you didn't, they're not liable for it. But if you go to them, because they do have authority and responsibility of the Secretary of State, then they're going to do something about it. A person appointed to conduct a branch office shall receive compensation fixed, right? So this person is appointed to conduct a branch office. This is the person I'm looking for. Who was appointed by the Secretary of State to represent the Secretary of State? And then the Secretary of State may prescribe, provide suitable forms of applications, certificates of titles, registration certificates, operators and chauffeurs licenses, and all other requisite or deemed necessary to carry out the provisions of this act, the enforcement and administration of which is vested in the department. Ask them for a copy of all their forms. Because it's the stuff under the counter that we're not seeing. Because, like I said, a lot of these offices that I found that are attached to Secretary of State, they're not on the website. They may have a phone number you can find, but they're not on the website. Administering oaths. Well, I got to say one more, because this is the other one. You want this person that can administer oaths, because when they put, first of all, you need to do it for your qualified voter roll in Michigan. But if you want to file a complaint with somebody, you want to have these people give you an oath. An officer or employee designated by the Secretary of State for the purpose of administering the motor vehicle laws shall administer oaths and acknowledge signatures without fee. I don't want just anybody from the Secretary of State. I want the one who, for the purposes of administering motor vehicle laws. Right? That's who I want. Who here administers motor vehicle laws in compliance with 257-207? All right, I'm going to copy this and take it with me and say, who is it? I need to talk to that person. And they say, well, I don't really know what you mean. So then go ask somebody else, right? Because this is what I want to do. I want to talk to the person here who's supposed to be administering the motor vehicle laws. Because the law says there is one. Now, who is it? The Secretary of State and the officers designated by the Secretary of State may prepare, under seal of the Secretary of State, and deliver upon request a certified copy of record maintained under this act and charge a fee as set forth in this act. And so they can give you that driver's record under their seal that you could go put into court to show that there is nothing against you to that private court. And I think that they would stop. But there has to be a way to bring it to the Secretary of State's attention that I'm being charged with a crime and you don't know about it. It's a simulated legal process, and how do I file a complaint for that? A certified computer generator or paper copy of a record maintained under this act shall be admissible in all proceedings in a court in the same manner as original record shall be prima facie evidence, right? And you can go to the court or the office of the clerk of the court, and they can get a copy. A court or office of clerk of the court of this state that is electronically connected by a terminal device to the computerized central file of the Secretary of State may receive into and use as evidence in any case the computer-generated certified information obtained by terminal device from this file. A duly authorized employee of the court of record of the state may order a record for an individual from a Secretary of State computer terminal device located in, under control of the court, and certify in writing that the document was produced from the terminal and that the court was not altered and that the document was not altered in any way. The court can do it for you. Tell them to pull up your official record to see if this charge has been added to it. Because if you're going to be charged with a state infraction, well, how come the Secretary of State didn't get a hold of me? I haven't had proper notice. Okay, anyways, this goes on and on and on, but again, everything I'm showing you here was within like the first 35, 40 pages of the act. So, okay, well, hey, I'm done yakking. I hope you got something out of it. Secretary of State's got lots of power. We need to investigate. That's really all this was, and to give the officials who are out there trying to execute the law to understand, don't be writing down state code violations unless you're going to give it to the Secretary of State. It's not going to turn out well for you anymore. Okay. Y'all have a great day.